Sup guys, King here, bringing you some, well, a discussion video regarding the new Naughty Dog game, Intergalactica, the Heretic Prophet, and basically all the negative feedback that this game is getting, which is honestly both surprising and not surprising. Before I go further into this, remember to like and subscribe, guys. And yeah, I'm just gonna sit and talk about this because this is kind of crazy. So as we all know, you know, Last of Us 2 divided the fan base right down into the middle, and maybe perhaps even more. And 4 years later, you still have a lot of disdain for what Neil Druckmann and Naughty Dog basically did with that game, to the point where you've had a lot of people come and call other people certain names, and other people calling other people names, to the point where it's become very, very ridiculous. The hate's become very, very overblown, but at the same time it's understandable because, truthfully, Last of Us 2 was not a very well-written game. Now, if you guys see my video from 4 years ago when I made that video talking about all of this and explaining why, you know, regarding the leaks, by the way, and actually talking about them and explaining why this game's story is bad, I played the game, by the way. I did eventually get around to playing The Last of Us 2. I know, you've never seen a hypocrite before. No, I got around to playing it finally, just to make my own minds up about it. And honestly, I agree with pretty much what a lot of people say in terms of the fact that the gameplay is good, the visuals are good, the performances are good, but the story, the writing, and the characters are absolute shite. Okay, like for me, it was like a flashback to Game of Thrones final season, where everything was just this, you know, inconsiderate, inconsistent writing, and you're supposed to like it and go, see, this is a masterpiece, and it's like, it's not. This is fucking dumb. And I apologize for the words there, but I gotta say it. I gotta say it because it's true. It is true. Like, if you can watch that series, right, and agree that it's a bad final season, then you can play The Last of Us 2 and agree that, no, this is not a good piece of writing. And unfortunately, you know, like most developers, or in this case, I would argue Asian developers would be more considerate of the criticisms, but it seems that when it comes to Western developers, those guys take offense at it and try to fight back and basically fight against the fan base and tell them, no, you're wrong and we're right. And that's a very dumb mistake to do, because you should never ever attack the fan base, ever, because the fan base is what puts you on the map. The fan base is what's going to get you your money. Like, if you attack the fans, they're not going to buy your product. If you're going to say stuff that's against the fan base, you're just taking the piss, basically. If I'm a creator and I'm creating something, I'm creating it for other people, not just myself. Okay, I need to, you know, sit down, think, what are people gonna like, you know, that I can do, that they can enjoy, and I'm gonna do this. And if they got criticisms, I can't just sit there and go, oh, well, you know, they're wrong, you know, they're homophobic, they're transphobic, they're racist. No, I can't say shit like that. That makes no sense. I need to sit down and literally look at the criticism and be like, okay, they didn't like this. Okay, maybe next time I can do better. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be the case, because Naughty Dog clearly hasn't learned their lessons. And it's not surprising, because Naughty Dog is pretty much being run by a man-child. A man-child that is very egotistical and thinks he's hot shit, and in reality he isn't. He isn't. A lot of people will sit and say, well, Last of Us 2 won the Game Awards, it sold this much, and it's like, that doesn't really matter. Like, just because a game wins a certain award doesn't mean that it's the best game in the world. Like, if you remember that year, the People's Choice Award, for example, it ended up being Ghost of Tsushima. That won the People's Choice Award. That didn't win Game of the Year, but that won the People's Choice Award, you know, for what people enjoyed most. Last of Us 2 didn't win that. And as we've seen from the Game Awards, it's a show that's pretty much very, as the term people would use, very woke, if you will, or very diverse and very progressive in terms of the games they pick. It's very rare when you get a game that's unexpected that wins. A lot of people would assume that this year, you know, it should have been Black Myth Wukong. That didn't win, unfortunately. Instead, Astral Boy won, which, you know, I haven't played it. I haven't played Black Myth either, so I can't really sit here and say it deserved it or that deserved it. But it's nice that PlayStation, as a, it's if you will a mascot, if you will, won, if that makes sense. Like sort of like we finally have our own Mario, if you will, and that won. So it's like that's cute, it's good, it's nice, but I get it. But back to Neil Druckmann. Anyone who's done their research, anyone who's done their research on The Last of Us 2 and seen how the development for that game went, anyone who's gone back through and seen the crap that Druckmann has done and said, knows that he's not a very smart or reliable or very good person. Okay? This is a man, for example, who wanted to kill off Elena at the end of Uncharted 2. And if I swear to God, if it wasn't for Amy Hemming and Bruce Starling, that would have been the case if he had full control. But that didn't happen, thank God. And of course, with Last of Us 1, we all know who the real creator of Last of Us 1 was, which is Bruce Starling. It wasn't Neil Druckmann, because Neil Druckmann came up with a bunch of ideas that were rejected. Bruce Starling came in and was like, no, we're not doing that because it's fucking stupid. And he changed the story. He made Neil change the story so that it would end up being better. Because that's what you do. You sit down, you look at what doesn't work, and you improve it. And Neil Druckmann, Neil sat there and was like, yeah, I agreed with everything Bruce said and did. And then a few years later, he backtracks and does all of this. Uncharted 4 is a prime example of someone basically taking the project over from the original creator and doing their own thing with it and then taking all the credit. As you all know, the original Uncharted 4 was being written and directed by Amy Hemming. 80% of the game was completed before Neil Druckmann did or said something that basically got Amy Hemming fired. People will say, oh, she wasn't fired, she wasn't let go, she left. It's like, no, that's not true. Because if you watch some of the interviews with Richard McGonigal, who plays Sully in the Uncharted series, he straight up says and admits that, no, Amy Hemming was fired. And he even says that him, Nolan North, and Emily Rose apparently wanted to walk off, but were contracted to do the game. So they couldn't leave the project. They were contracted to finish Uncharted 4, unfortunately, without Amy. And Nolan North himself has said in interviews, yeah, the game was 80% complete. They scrapped the whole thing. They changed the plot. They even cut Charlie Carter from the game, who was a big supporting character in the original version. But all of his material got cut. They changed the entire story with Sam and Nate. Like Sam originally was the main villain with Rafe as the secondary villain. But that all got cut. The actors got changed. And then because Neil Druckmann came in and did his own thing with it, and Sam ended up becoming a main support character, which basically forced Charlie's character out of the story, which reduced Sully's role. Again, Richard pretty much said he had a bigger role in the original version before the change in direction. And yeah, you can just tell from the interviews and having talked to them sort of personally a bit, you can tell like there was a bit of a sadness there, because clearly these guys are like a tight family, basically. Amy's like their mother. She did this series, they did it with them, and then she gets kicked out. It's like, yeah, it's not her game anymore. And Neil Druckmann took the credit for that, unfortunately. Just like he basically took credit for The Last of Us 1 when that was, technically speaking, Bruce Starling's game. I mean, I think there was a situation at one point where the TV series came out, and I think Bruce Starling himself complained that he wasn't being credited for the show, when he actually had a big part in writing and directing the series, more so than Neil actually did, which is crazy, but it's the truth. And now we're coming 4 years later, and we get the reveal of this new game, and yeah, people aren't happy. They aren't happy, and we're gonna go through this. We're gonna go through this right now. So yeah, if you go on YouTube right now, and if you go on YouTube and you go on their channel, basically, if you go on the Naughty Dog trailer, for example, if you can find it, here you go, and you click on it. Look at that, the comments have been turned off. So immediately, this trailer hasn't even come out yet, and the moment it gets posted up, the trailer's already automatically turned off, apparently. Like, which, it tells you everything you need to know about Naughty Dog and Neil Druckmann in this current climate. They can't take criticism. That's the biggest thing about Neil Druckmann. He can't take criticism. And every time anyone complained about stuff regarding Uncharted 4 and The Last of Us 2, he had those people fired. If you guys remember, apparently 70% of developers walked out in the middle of Last of Us 2. That shit doesn't happen to just any like, how does that even work? How do you just go up and like, you know what, we're leaving, done, goodbye. And there was a report, I forget if it was by Jason Schreier or something? Is that his name? He did a report saying how bad the working conditions at Naughty Dog were. And yet the Studio One Studio of the Year during the 2020 awards, which is crazy. Like, you literally put a report out complaining about the, how bad the working conditions are. 70% of the workers left, and you give the award to the studio that's basically been screwing up, like, and has a very bad work crunch. Like, what? So again, if you sit down and you go and you look at the behind the scenes stuff, like really dig deep into it, you notice a lot of issues, a lot of problems. And I get there's a lot of game companies that have the same issues in that, but to such an extreme, it's kind of embarrassing. And going back to this trailer and this video, you can see the dislike ratio. You know, dislikes are kind of blocked on YouTube now. You have to sort of get an app to unblock it and see it. But look at that. 46k likes versus 97k dislikes. Like, that's crazy. And remember, Naughty Dog, when Last of Us 2 came out, and after all the criticism, you had Neil Druckmann and Naughty Dog pretty much say, oh yeah, it's just a small vocal minority, like, that's hating on the game. Does that look like a small freaking minority to you? 97k. Okay, let's move on. That's the Naughty Dog video, right? Let's look at the, let me see, the Game Awards. 2.3k versus 8.6k. Seriously? IGN. 15k versus 44k. I swear, I looked at this up. I've been looking at this for the last day or two, and the numbers just keep going up for this. Like, unless there's people making multiple accounts, right? Which is kind of crazy if you consider it. People are really not liking this. And finally, we have the PlayStation video. 62k likes versus 130k dislikes. At this point, it's pretty blam obvious. It's like, yeah, this isn't good. And yeah, I didn't like it. Obviously, you can see I've put the freaking thing there. Yeah, I'm gonna put it this like why, and I'm gonna explain why. Okay, I'm gonna explain why, because it looks generic. Okay, let me go into that for a bit. The gameplay just looks generic. Okay, everything I'm seeing, and I get it, we haven't seen gameplay, and this is the thing. This is kind of the hope where I feel like maybe we're being a bit too harsh. Maybe this game is actually going to be good, right? Because here's the thing. Neil Druckmann can't ruin anything. He can't. Because this is a new game, it's a new IP, he's doing it, he's in full control, there's nothing to ruin. It's not like on The Last of Us 2 where he basically crapped on the entire story, or Uncharted 4 where he took over and crapped on someone else's story. This is his own IP. So this is sort of like, if you will, I'd say this is sort of like a Star Wars sequel situation where, I've always said this. The Star Wars sequels should have just had one director. You should have just had J.J. Abrams do all 3 movies. Or at best, you should have just had Rian Johnson do episode 8 and 9 at the same, together, and not have this inconsistency. Do you know what I mean? Like, because there was too much inconsistency with those movies because you didn't have one vision, one full-on vision. And with this, you have one vision. You have one director, one writer, whatever you want to call it, doing this, and that's it. And it's the first IP as well. So there's nothing really to screw up. And this is one of those cases where it's like, this could be good. This could be fun, right? This could be a good game. Like, because there's Neil, he's starting out fresh. He can do whatever he wants. The problem, however, is that everything I'm seeing from this, I'm not liking it. Because it feels, and like a lot of people have said, it feels too much like it's trying too hard. This feels very much like Concord, right? And we all know what happened with Concord. We all know how that turned out. It didn't turn out good. Concord was a massive flop and failure and disaster. And this game, like from what I'm seeing, is trying to give those vibes, that sort of classic sort of vibes. Concord was going for sort of a 70s feel. This is going for an 80s feel. And don't get me wrong, I love that. I love that sort of era. I wasn't born in it, but I've always heard about it. I always watch the 80s movies, and I love that era. And the style looks kind of cool, but it's too familiar. Right, that's the problem. And the character design, and I get it, people are going to be like, oh, you just want a big-breasted female character. No, I want a good, fun character that doesn't scream progressive and woke to me. I'm Iranian, okay? I'm Iranian. I was born in Germany. I'm growing up in England. All right, I'm a very multicultural kind of person, basically. And I've got family from different sides of the family, So to sit there and go, oh, you don't like progressive, I want to be honest with you. Not really. No, I'm not really much of a liking progressive diversity kind of guy, because we've never really had diversity. We don't have progression where we come from in terms of being represented, if you will. And frankly, we don't really give a crap. We just want a good story. Like, it doesn't matter to me if the character's going to be black, white, Asian, or whatever, as long as the character's good. But I'm looking at this design, right? And all I'm thinking is Concord. I'm thinking of Callisto Protocol as well, which I didn't like. That had a bold white male character, and they were using a freaking chain stun band or whatever as well. That looked cool at first, and that's sort of got the same thing, and that's what I'm talking about when it comes to generic. I've seen this kind of stuff before. They're fighting a robot in this, what it looks like, not aliens. Okay, that's different, but again, we've had games where we fight robots. Does that make sense? I'm kind of reminded of the character from Alien Romulus, you know, that one character with a bald head, Navarro. I'm kind of reminded of that. I'm getting feelings of that, you know, and it's like, I don't know what I'm getting from this. I don't know what this is meant to be. We don't really get a good idea of what this game is. Whereas you look at The Last of Us, for example, or you look at Uncharted, you get a very good idea of what those main characters are, what the story might be, and what the constant tone is. And here, all I'm getting from this is generic sci-fi game. And the main character just screams, big, strong female character, like, and that's it. And you know, there's none of the femininity, none of the beauty or anything in it. And it's like, why is it with Western developers designing characters, you know, female characters especially, that aren't beautiful? Now, I'm not going around saying you should sex up the character, okay? I get that, like, but, you know, cool female characters to me are like Sarah Connor, Ellen Ripley, you know, from the Aliens and Terminator franchises. A lot of people are going around calling this character butch or lesbian. I don't know. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. You know, we don't actually know, but that's the vibe people are getting from it. And it's like, you know, you can write a good progressive character. Sailor Moon did it with the, you know, was it Sailor Neptune and Sailor Uranus? They did it with that. I'm trying to think of other good examples. Are there good examples? Look, guys, I live in the UK where we have soap TV, and we have soap TV filled with gay characters, and most of them are done well, most of them aren't. But you know, it never feels like, oh, this is just hitting me over the head with it. It feels normal, it feels natural, and you get some really cool actors playing some really cool characters sometimes. And in the end of the day, that's what you want to see. And if it's not good, it's not good. If it's good, great, awesome, brilliant. We don't really focus on that part. We focus more on the character and the performance in there, you know. And hopefully this is a case of where the performance will be good. And I imagine the performance will be good. Okay. You know, I've never really complained about the performances when it comes to Naughty Dog. The performances in the Naughty Dog games have always been good. The thing that's not good is the writing. And Neil Druckmann has proven time and time again he's not a good writer. And that's the biggest problem with his character, his personality, and his attitude. And all I'm seeing from this is the same sort of mistakes that we already got with those other games. You know, Nadine was not a good written female character in Uncharted 4. She was a good written character in Lost Legacy, but that wasn't written by Neil Druckmann or directed by him. So that tells you everything you really need to know in terms of, like, Neil Druckmann cannot write women. The only reason Elena is good, for example, is because her character's already established. You know, and Emily Rose did a fantastic job with that. So you can't really ruin that unless you try really, really hard. Which you know, Neil did with The Last of Us 2, where he completely butchered Ellie and Joel's and Tommy's characters. Like, he completely ruined them to the point where they didn't feel like the characters from the first game at all. And I get people are gonna go bring this whole crap up. Oh, it was a few years later and all that. You know, things are different. But it's like, it can't be that drastic and different. You know, like in that short amount of time. Like unless you're doing something like God of War, for example, where you got Kratos acting very differently because he's in a very different situation to what he was before, and he's growing as a person. All right, you know, he's not being inconsistent; he's growing. So that kind of makes sense and works. Whereas what they did with Joe and Ellie and other characters, it didn't work. It just felt like pandering, like to tell the story, to force the story, and that's never a good thing. Let me give you an example of forcing a story. Spider-Man No Way Home, right? You have this whole situation where Peter goes to Doctor Strange, for example, to help him make the world forget, right? And Strange says he's going to do the spell for him. And that's all good and dandy. The problem is, Strange and Peter should be very smart characters, and they're not. And Strange doesn't really explain the spell to him. He just does it on the go, and we're just meant to accept it. Oh, that he's being arrogant or he's trying to be helpful. But it's like, no. If this was the Strange from the previous movies, he would have sat down to explain the situation. And Peter would have sat down to explain the situation, or at least been smart enough to know, oh, let me try, like the whole with the, you can go and, find the person and actually talk to them about getting you back in the university and that. Like, you didn't need to do all of this. Oh, I didn't know you could do that. It's like, how would you not know to do that? Like, you're meant to be a smart character. Like, Tony Stark made you an Avenger, and yet you forget that big, important detail. And then Strange doesn't really sit down to explain the spell to him. And that's a case of them trying to force the plot, because they need the plot to go in a certain way, so they have the characters act dumb. And that's the biggest problem of Last of Us 2, where you have the characters act dumb and inconsistent to what we've seen before in order to push the story forward. Which is also what happens in Game of Thrones in the later seasons, where characters act dumb in order to push the story forward. And suddenly everything just doesn't make sense and it's inconsistent. And people will rightfully tear this crap apart. They will get pissed off and they'll tear this crap apart. And it's like, it's no surprise that you're getting so many dislikes and people being angry. Like, let's look at some comments. Let's see if we can find some comments here. Let's see. This trailer's 2 hours ago. Ew, it's so old. We need a remaster. And that's another thing. This game's been in development for 4 years apparently, and they couldn't show us gameplay after 4 years. You couldn't show us gameplay. When The Last of Us 2 was announced, we had to wait, what, 2-3 years before we got the game? Was it 5 years maybe? And we gradually got gameplay, right? But that sort of started development when they announced it, yeah? This has been in development for 4 years, and we didn't even get a single gameplay. Like, you couldn't do that. You couldn't show us a snippet of gameplay, like showing us the things that happen. And yeah, it's no surprise people are pissed. And I feel like Will Smith will slap me for making fun of her. G.I. Jane, everyone! From the studio who brought you Crash Bandicoot, Jake, Dexter, and Uncharted. Nice. How many of they still work there? And that's true. Like, I pretty much assume that pretty much none of the people now that worked on those games work there anymore. Like, they're pretty much gone. Maybe 5% of them are still there, but that's not a lot, is it? You never go full Concord. Yeah. The most surprising thing about this trailer is that Sony left the comments on. Yeah, that is surprising. It is surprising that Sony, of all people, left the comments on. Same with the PlayStation channel. It's like, yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's right. It's no surprise people are looking at this and they're losing their minds because, yeah. As I said, it looks generic. Everything about it, at least for the moment, feels generic. And then, of course, we have the plot, apparently, where... What is it? We thought we were going to get this big space adventure, but apparently that's not the case. Jordan Amon, a dangerous bounty hunter who ends up stranded on Separino, or Severino, whatever the planet's called, a distant planet whose communication with the outside universe went dark hundreds of years ago. Jordan will have to use all her skills and wits if she hopes to be the first person in over 600 years to leave its orbit. So immediately, you know what the general plot of this game is going to be. She's going to be the first person to escape the planet, and no one else will. She's going to be better than all the other characters that we're going to get introduced to, because she's the badass, she's the strong one, she's the one that's going to over-prevail, she's the chosen one, and she's going to make it. And it's like... Yeah, that sounds very generic and repetitive. We've seen this kind of story before. We've seen this kind of stuff before. It's not new. And then, of course, we have this shot here with some familiar people, I guess. I don't really recognize a lot of these people here. Obviously, that's the dude from Eternals, I believe. I liked him. He's in the game, apparently. He's the guy we're hunting, apparently. So that's kind of cool. But, yeah, this just feels like Neil Druckmann trying to basically be Hideo Kojima. Like, I'm gonna get all these Hollywood actors to be in my game now because, yeah, that's what I want to do. And it's clearly obvious that's what Neil Druckmann wants to do. He wants to work in Hollywood. He wants to make movies. He wants to make TV shows. He doesn't want to work on games. So what does he do? He's using he's using Naughty Dog as a platform to get into the into the Hollywood industry. That's what he's using it for. That's really his A game here. His big master plan. And I get that. I do get it. But at the same time, it's like, Is that Neil Druckmann's ID card over there? Yeah, I get that, but yeah, it's just a case of yeah, it feels generic. Obviously, if we get the gameplay trailer and it actually looks good, then it's a case of overhate, calm down, give this a chance. The problem, however, is that me, for example, I gave Last of Us 2 a chance, and despite, again, like I said, the visuals and the gameplay being good, I didn't like the story and characters. And I'm going to say this as well. I didn't feel like the gameplay was fun. That's another thing. I didn't think the game was fun to play. It's good, don't get me wrong. It's not fun to play. And it's no surprise because Neil Druckmann himself even said, we don't use the word fun around here. He didn't set out to make a fun game. And if your aim as a game developer is not to make a fun game, then what the hell are you even working in the industry for? If you can't take criticism, if your aim objective is not to make a game that's fun to play, what the hell are you even doing in the industry? And it feels like a lot of people who really resent what they did with Last of Us 2 and even Uncharted 4 if you go back to it, because it really all sort of started with that game essentially. It all started to go really wrong with that. And all the lies that Neil Druckmann did with his marketing as well, with like, oh, the game's going to be about Joel and Ellie, trust us, we're going to do right by them. And he didn't. He took a golf club and he took away everyone's favorite character, basically. And he gave us a half-assed, crappy revenge storyline, which could have worked if it was written well, but it wasn't. If you want to write a good revenge story, you're going to need the writers for Red Dead Redemption 2 for that. You need to go to Rockstar and be like, hey, can you guys write our revenge story for Last of Us 2? Because I feel like you would do a great job. And that's not what they did. No, they got Hallie Gross, who wrote the meh episodes, if you will, of Westworld, and she's not considered a really good writer. So it's very a surprising case of why would you hire someone who a lot of people are hating writing-wise, and it's obvious why he hired her, because she was a yes woman. That's all it is. He needed a yes man, he needed someone who wouldn't oppose him like Bruce Sterling did, so, that's what it feels like, and, yeah, Druckmann, I don't like him as a person, I don't like him, period. I think he is an imbecile and an idiot. You had that that article a few weeks ago where it was like, oh, the top game developers, and he was on the same level. He was considered on the same level as Hideo Kojima, and it's like, do not ever put this guy on the same level as Hideo Kojima. Hideo Kojima made several games that people like, and even if they didn't like it, they still sit there like in terms of the impact that it has had, and they sit there like it's still good. Like MGS5, for example, for me is one of his weakest games, like story-wise again, but it's still a damn good game and it's a fun game to play. And Death Stranding, yeah, it was weird and that, but I still liked it. It was interesting. And, you can't say that about a lot of developers. Neil Druckmann, what actually has he done? Like, what actually has he done by himself? Because Uncharted 2 and 4 was pretty much co-direction with Bruce Sterling and Amy Hemming with Uncharted 2 specifically. He didn't really have a lot of input with that game, the way he did with Uncharted 4, where he basically came in and took it over. And The Last of Us 1, again, co-direction with Bruce Sterling, where Bruce's ideas won more over Neil's. And then when Neil finally did get a chance to do something, it was Last of Us 2, which wasn't a big hit. If it was, let me put it this way, guys. If the game was really, really good, it would have sold very, very well, but it didn't. Let me explain. When a game sells very well, right? You always have the company coming out, the studios coming out, and every few months or weeks updating the sales and letting you know the game has sold this much in this many months. The game has sold this much in this many weeks. The game sold 4 billion, was it, in the first week or 4 weeks? And then there was just quietness. For 2 years, there was just radio silence on how much the game sold. And then after 2 years, Neil Druckmann came out and said, after 2 years, we've sold 10 million copies. And that's not impressive. That's not impressive because when you compare that to Spider-Man 2, for example, or God of War Ragnarok, sequels that came out, those games sold more than about 10 million in less than a few weeks or months, which is crazy. It's insane. Last of Us 2 didn't accomplish that. It didn't accomplish that goal. And you also got to keep in mind that the game was being reduced. It was being reduced. It was being sold at reductions, at low prices and sales. And apparently in a lot of Asian territories, the game wasn't selling at all. which is insane to think about. Like, it's a Sony exclusive PlayStation game, and it wasn't selling well in Asian territories. Like, how badly did you screw up that the bad word of mouth convinced a lot of people not to buy that game day one, or even return? Because a lot of games, a lot of the orders pretty much returned, or pre-orders were cancelled. I pre-ordered my pre-order several times. I pre-ordered it twice, actually. I remember I pre-ordered it, cancelled it after hearing the leaks, and I was like, you know what, let me pre-order, let me give this a chance. And then I cancelled it a second time because I was like, no, I'm not going to give this a chance, no. And I waited till the game was basically in the bargain bin before I bought it and tried it, and yeah, the rest is history. But that's just a case of, yeah, it didn't do well financially, which is one of the reasons why we ended up getting a remake of Last of Us 1, which didn't turn out to be a remake, it just turned out to be another remaster, which wasn't very good. Because it was just the same freaking game, with a little bit of makeover here and there, but yeah, not much difference. It's the same, it's 99% the same freaking game. It's not a remake on the same level as Resident Evil 2, 4, or even Final Fantasy in that. It's just a painted over remaster. That's all it is, without the multiplayer. And that's another thing, the multiplayer. Factions 2, where's that? You know, we were supposed to get that. It got cancelled. And then what did Neil do next? Oh, we got a remaster for Last of Us 2. A remaster. After 4 years. After 4 years, we get a remaster. And usually you would do a Game of the Year edition a year or two after the game releases. No, we got a remaster for it 4 years afterwards. Which is crazy. That doesn't happen if a game does very, very well. And it seems like the only reason they did all of that in the first place is so they could contend with the TV show. Because the TV show is what did well. And even the TV show wasn't good. Like, I watched like 1 or 2 episodes and I called it quits because I honestly thought, no, this is a very bad adaptation. They screwed with the characters, they screwed with the lore, they've taken things out that shouldn't have been taken out, they changed things that they shouldn't have changed. They killed off Bill, they shouldn't have killed off because he doesn't die in the original freaking game. They completely changed it, and then instead of making Last of Us 1, 2 seasons, they're making the second 2 seasons, which, yeah, it makes sense, it's a longer game, but still, it's like you're not showing the same respect to the original game because you just want to fast forward quickly to the second one and be like, see, look, it's a masterpiece, this is my work of art, this is my baby. And it's like, your baby shit, it's trash, throw it away, like, it's not going to amount to anything. And now he's doing this original game, which may be good, it may not be good. But so far from the dislikes that we're seeing here and the word of mouth, a lot of people just, they aren't convinced. I mean, let's see. Do we have anything here? This new Jaguar ads. I generally gave this a 10 out of 10. Yeah. Can't wait for the remaster in 2 years and remake in 4 years. Yeah. The age... yeah. Yeah. The only good thing here is IGN not turning off. Yeah, again. Yeah, the fact that Naughty Dog has to turn off the comments in their video is already a bad sign. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is a bad sign. You don't do that. If you're positive and proud of something that you're sure is going to be a hit, you don't turn off the comments. Like, and don't give me this crap like, oh, they knew it was going to get hated. Yeah, of course it's going to get criticized. Because it looks generic. If it didn't look generic, people would be like, oh, this looks interesting. And it's sad because I've always wanted to see Naughty Dog do a sci-fi game. And we're finally getting a sci-fi game, and it feels like the most generic Guardians of the Galaxy sort of rip-off, / Concord rip-off, / a bunch of other stuff. And, it's like, why do you keep, it's like, what's another good comparisons? Remember when Killmonger was first introduced in the MCU with Black Panther, right? And Michael B. Jordan had that haircut specifically for his character, that specific haircut that every black character in like video games started having, like Miles Morales, he had the same freaking haircut. The new Prince of Persia game, the prince had the same haircut. It's like the developers looked at that film and were like, oh, everyone likes this character. Let's just, have every black character have that same style. And it's like, that's been very stereotype. It's like if you did an Iranian character, right, and it's just like a full-on beard, right, because like that's what we are, right? It's like, yeah, like make every Iranian character look like that now, like, and it's like that's not what we all look like. What you doing? And we got this game coming out, and it, like I said, like the whole sword, blade, whatever. It's cool. Don't get me wrong, it looks cool, but I've seen that before, and it's nothing new to me. It's not doing anything new to me. Like I said, like, it feels generic. I want to like this, but I can't. And also because of the past stuff that's happened, it's just making me very, very nervous and wary about this, which is sad. And I think the biggest problem as well is the fact that we know that, you know, Neil Druckmann himself pretty much came out and said he's directing and writing this, and it's like immediately it's like, yeah, nope, get out of here, not interested. Which is, yeah, that's gonna happen. Like, it's like if you see a movie being made by Uno Ball, for example, you know it's gonna be shit. You know it's gonna be shit. You're not gonna waste your time watching it because you know he's a terrible director, right? So why would you watch it? And it's kind of the same thing here. We know that Neil Druckmann's not a good writer, so what do we have to look forward to? Like, just the same old crap that he's done with the previous games that he's worked on? Like, this is a guy who took the piss who attacked the fan base, who fired people for having legit concerns, and who stole people's other IPs and took credit for it. Like, remember that one writer, that scriptwriter for the Uncharted movie? The original scriptwriter for the Uncharted movie, who made an interview and was like, yeah, he's a hitchhiker, and that's what he is. He's a hitchhiker, that's what he is. That is exactly what Neil Druckmann is. He's a hitchhiker. And yeah, it's like there's no positivity there. It's like it's gotten to the point where people now realize that he's full of shit, and people have every right to dislike and be wary of his next project, because it's like, yeah, I've seen what you've done before and I'm not interested. Versus someone like Hideo Kojima, who's proven himself over the years multiple times, with some ups and downs here and there, that, you know, at least the game's going to be interesting. It's probably going to be weird. It's going to be. It might not be for you, but at least it's something interesting and different compared to the usual schlock that we always get. You know, that's one of the things I like about the Metal Gear games. They don't all feel the same. Or even Death Stranding was very different to what he's done before, and that was unique. That was fun for me, because it's like I'm not playing the same freaking thing over and over again. Or, like, you look at the Resident Evil games, they sort of evolve every few generations. You always get something new. Like, you had, like, the original survival horror, then you had the action series, and then you had sort of the first-person view games of 7 and 8. And that's why when you do it, like, every game that you get, like, with a certain franchise, it feels familiar and yet very different and fun to play. But with Naughty Dog, and with Neil Druckmann in particular, it just feels like he's just doing copy and paste and doing a makeover, essentially, with it. And it's like, this is a new game, enjoy it. And it's like, no. It's like, give me something different. Like, stop doing the generic crap. Like, we're sick and tired of it. And people are sick and tired of it. Concord, Suicide Squad. What was the other one that came? Veilguard apparently didn't do very well. A bunch of other games that are very, that, if you will, were very DEI focused, if you will. And it's not even a case of being woke. You know, there's projects that are woke, but that are good, like Agatha, for example, like on Disney Plus. Like, would I say that's woke? Yeah, maybe, properly, but I liked it because it was written well. I thought it was done very well. As far as many of the MCU projects go, that was one of the better ones compared to, say, some of the crap we've gotten in recent years, like Secret Invasion or Quantumania, for example, or She-Hulk. I didn't like those. I really didn't like those, and but I really liked that, and that was a case of, you know, good performances and good, decent writing. You know, they tried. And in my opinion, they succeeded. But this is a case of, you're trying too hard. You're trying to push this message, if you will, this propaganda, and it's very obvious. And people don't like that. They don't like that anymore. Like, they're getting fed up with it. It's like it's hard to explain. It is hard to explain because we've explained it a dozen times, and it's just getting annoying to repeat ourselves over and over and over again. But that's just the fact of it. But yeah, I can see why people are pissed at this. I can, and I'm not surprised. It's like, yeah, I mean, 44, Jesus Christ. 44. 130. That doesn't happen to any, you know what I mean? That doesn't just happen like because people are being hateful bigots. Like, it's happening because you've pissed people off too many times, and they're just fed up with the crap, because this is the only way they can get across to you that, hey, this isn't what we want. Like, stop making this trash. Stop making these kind of games. We want something else. Give us something else. Like, the people are fed up. They're done. They're tired. They're exhausted. We want to go back to just playing games and forgetting about reality for a few hours, because we don't care about reality. We don't care about the real world. We play video games to escape the real world. If there's things in the game that sort of relate to the real world or help us grow as a person, cool. But at the same time, we don't want to be thinking about it 24/7. We want to play something that's going to have us escape into a new reality where we're not like thinking about all of this crap that's happening in the real world. Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't want to think about that. Like, and before people scream, oh, you're a sexist, you don't like women. Like I've already said, Sarah Connor, Ellen Ripley, Sailor Moon, great example of a series that was progressive and done right. Recent stuff, The Owl House, that was great. That's on Disney, Disney Plus. It's a Disney show. Give it a go if you haven't seen it. That's very well done. Amphibian, another example. Great, very well done. Very fun show. Anime wise, there's a lot of examples of good anime with good female characters. Bleach is a good example. There's a lot. There's a lot. If you actually sit down and look for it, there's a lot. But people act like it's not been done, and it's like it has been done. It has been done, and it's just and it feels like this game is trying to. It's targeting certain groups, and it's like those groups aren't gonna give a shit. They're not gonna, even if they buy the game. A lot of people, the typical people aren't gonna buy this game. There's more of us than there's more of them, and you're appealing to them. And they don't care because if they don't like something, they're going to attack you regardless. Do you know what I mean? They're going to attack you and they're not going to give a shit. So why are you appealing to these people? Like, just make a fun game and stop caring about what those people say, because they're not going to give a crap. They're not going to support this. They didn't support those other games. I didn't see anyone supporting Concord. What happened to Concord? Because no one cared. No one cared. Where was the people that the game was being made for? They disappeared. They weren't there to help it. I guess there was only 200 of them. But yeah, that's really all I can really say. The Game Awards itself, in my opinion, was a very terrible event. I didn't really like it. I did like the reveal for Witcher 4. Unfortunately, that was spoiled for me. Because the bloody heading literally had it on the Game Awards on the heading Witcher 4. It's like, oh, it's going to be revealed, and they revealed it, and they revealed that you get to play as Ciri, and I didn't have a problem with that. Why? Because The Witcher 3. And I think the Witcher series in general is not really about Geralt. Like he's the POV, if you will, but the main character, main focus has always been Ciri. She's technically the main character, and it makes sense that after the way Witcher 3 ended, like depending on which ending you get, if you get the Witcher ending with Ciri, it makes sense that it's going to continue her journey as the new Witcher going forward. And when I saw that CGI trailer, I was like, yeah, that's cool. Ciri's the main character. Awesome. I like Ciri. She's a very well developed, very well written character. I liked Witcher 3, and if she's the main character, cool. I don't have a problem in playing with female characters. What I have a problem is playing very shit written female characters. I don't like playing crap characters. I like to play good characters. For example, I'm not the biggest fan of Kratos in the original God of War games. Yeah, surprise, shocker. I don't like Kratos in the original Greek games. The only Greek game where I enjoyed playing as Kratos, where I understood his character, like where I really enjoyed it, where they really deep dived into it, was Ghost of Sparta, because that developed Kratos' backstory, it developed his family backstory, and I liked that. But everything else, I never really liked it. He was always this angry brute. And I get that's the point, but that's not appealing to me. Whereas Kratos in the new God of War games with 2018 and Ragnarok, I really loved his character in that. Like, that felt very real, very personal. I could relate to it. I could understand it. That's a very good written character. But then you have like characters like Abby, for example, in Last of Us 2, and that's not written well. I don't relate or understand that character. I get what they're going for, but that's not a good written character to me. If you wrote the character as a villain, and you weren't trying to ham-fist that, oh, this character is a good person and, that they're a hero in their own right, it could have worked, but it doesn't, because it's not an anime. That's another thing. It's not an anime. Anime can get away with taking a villain and giving him this sad backstory that you can understand and relate with. But at the end of the day, you still understand they're a villain and they need to be defeated. You feel sad for them, you feel sorry for them, but in the end of the day, you know the hero's going to prevail. Maybe the villain's going to turn good, maybe he's going to die, maybe he's going to sacrifice himself, but in the end of the day, something has to happen where the hero's going to prevail, and that's the case. And with Last of Us 2, we didn't get that. What we got was a very nonsense, inconsistent game that didn't make any sense when you sit down and really, really, really think about it. And, you know, that wouldn't be a problem if it was a game that's sort of, you know, you play and you shut your brain off. Like, you know, stuff like that exists. That's fine. But that's not the case. And it's a sequel to something that was sort of profound, that was sort of deep. Personally, I feel like the Last of Us franchise is very overrated. I think that first game is a very overrated game, but it was a good, well-made game for what it was, you know? Like, it had spirit and it had heart. That's the key thing. It had a soul to it. Last of Us 2 didn't have that. It just felt like shock value and torture porn. That's what it was. And yeah, I don't like the characters in that. And with this, just from looking at it, the same way that people looked at when Concord was first revealed as sort of this hero or multiplayer shooter, the minute that was revealed, people instantly knew it wasn't going to be good. And surprise, surprise, it was a big flop. Same with Suicide Squad. You know, the moment that was revealed for what it was like, yeah, it's going to be a flop. And then the story, the narrative came out, that got leaked, people played it, people got a game copy early, they leaked it, and they were like, this happens, and it's like, yeah. No shit, people are going to hate this game and not want to play it. Like, you did a huge disservice to Kevin Conroy and he's Batman in the Arkham universe. And look what's happened. Like, we've had that VR game, Arkham Shadow, come out. I've not played it. I've seen some walkthroughs of it, playthroughs. And the story is very, very good. It's like, that's what people wanted. And instead we got this piece of crap that people didn't want, where, yeah, it just wasn't very good. And it's just a case of these companies constantly forcing these ideas or these what is it? These designs or these character designs, and it's like, here you go, and it's like, we don't like that. We don't want that. Like stick to something we're familiar with, or stick to something good, but don't make it generic. Don't make it feel like you're trying too hard at this point, and that's what it is. But yeah, guys, I feel like I've mouthed off too much. I'm gonna take a rest now. It's late. I don't want to be spending hours and hours talking about this crap because honestly, it's just exhausting. All I will say is that I'm going to try and give this game a chance. I'm going to wait for the gameplay, and if the story ends up being good, you know, from good word of mouth, and you know, people say, oh no, it's decent for what it is. I'll give it a try. Or I'm just going to wait for it to go in the bargain, which is the most likely route I'm actually going to take, which is wait for this to have a big, massive price drop and then maybe try it. But it really all depends on what the gameplay trailer for this looks like. But for now, all I'm just thinking of this looks like it's going to be another generic sci-fi game that we've played a dozen times over. And I've already played multiple generic games, sci-fi games included, and I didn't like those. So, yeah. Hopefully this is different. Hopefully we're wrong about this and this is actually decent, but I don't think we are. And the fact that Naughty Dog, blocked comments just goes to show that Neil Druckmann hasn't learned anything. He's not taking criticism. So that makes me believe that, yeah, this is just another case of it's going to be interesting to see if this game's actually going to flop or not. Like, or if it's going to, because the only reason it will do well for the most part is because it's got Naughty Dog stamped on it. That's it. But we've seen how in recent years, it doesn't really matter if a certain studio's logo is on it. If you've not been making good, consistent games or listening to the fan base for a good few years, they're gonna start answering with their wallets, and that is by not getting the game. You know, look at what's going on with Ubisoft at the moment. Things are not going good for Ubisoft currently. So, and the same thing could technically happen with Naughty Dog. You know, you look at Capcom, for example, and it's like, you know, Capcom was sort of in a tight bed when it came to Resident Evil 6, for example. And I like Resident Evil 6, but it is a flawed game. And they really needed to sit down and reevaluate what they were doing with the series. And they did that. They sat down, they were like, okay, we need to go back to what made us great. And they did. And now look what's going on. We're getting this revival of other franchises now. We're getting Onimushu back. We're getting Kamina back, which probably means that maybe in a few years we're going to get Dino Crisis back. But the point is that they listened to their fan base. They didn't fall into that sort of progressive woke crap. A little bit, mind you. The Dead Rising remake or remaster, whatever you want to call it, did sort of fall into that territory, unfortunately, which is a shame. But hopefully they continue to listen to the fan base and realize, okay, we need to move away from this and start doing more of our own thing. Because that's the thing. It seems a lot of Asian developers these days are getting the message about, you know, just being fun games and not screwing with people and audiences, which is why you had like which is why like games like Stellar Blade and Black Myth did very, very well apparently. So, and a lot of Western games apparently didn't, because yeah, they're not taking our criticisms or voices into account, because they want to try and push an agenda, and everyone is sick of the agenda. It's like, just make a fun and good game, okay? Stop trying to act like you're doing something important or grand. You're not. Just make a fun game. That's all we care about. Like, you look at Death Stranding 2 with Kojima and what he's doing with that, and it's like, he doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care. Like, like last video did with the female characters and that. It's like, oh, you can take photos, you can do this. It's like who does that? Like, what Western developer does that? They don't. That's the thing. And he's doing it because he doesn't care. It's like, I don't care what these people think. I'm making this game for my fans, and I'm making this game for everyone, and I'm making this game for people who want to have fun, who don't care about, you know, bullshit crap like that. So, well done. Well done. This is why those games or companies are going to succeed in the long run, and why these companies aren't. Because at this point, they're not getting it through their heads. Like, we're tired of this shit. We're tired. Like, stop appealing to a certain group and start appealing more to people that actually care about video games, you know? And not journalists, video gamers. Anyway, I feel like I'm ranting on. Some of that was probably BS. I apologize for that. But I hope you understand what I'm trying to say here. But yeah, as always, guys, remember to like and subscribe. And yeah, I shall see you when I shall see you. Take care and